Or so, you might have heard this really chilling term popping up in the debate in France, Mexicanization. It paints this pretty grim picture of a future where the state is just losing its war against drug trafficking. But what if that's not some distant threat? What if the cartels are already there? Let's dig into the reality behind that buzzword.
Now, that line, it's not from some gritty crime drama. That is a direct, stark warning from magistrates on the front lines in Marseille, one of France's biggest cities. It's basically a cry for help that sets the stage for a crisis that is escalating at a frankly alarming speed.
Okay, so what does this Mexicanization actually look like on the ground? Well, the signs are pretty much everywhere, and they're becoming impossible to ignore.
So what does it really mean? At its heart, Mexicanization describes this dystopian scenario where the power of the state is being directly challenged by a competing criminal order. It's a battle for control, and it's not being fought in some faraway country, but right in the streets and institutions of a major European nation.
To really get your head around the scale of this, just look at the numbers. Police have identified 3,000 permanent drug dealing locations across France. Now, to put that in perspective, there are more permanent places to buy illegal drugs in France than there are McDonald's restaurants. This isn't some hidden underground network, it's a parallel retail infrastructure out in the open. And of course, an operation this big needs people. A lot of people. It's estimated that 250,000 people are employed in the narco economy in France. That's a workforce that's about the same size as the country's entire banking sector. We're not just talking about crime anymore. This is a massive, parallel economy. And you might think, well, the police must be fighting back, right? And they are. They're making huge seizures, over 110 tons in 2024 alone. But here's the kicker, the really telling part. Those massive seizures have had zero impact on street prices. It tells you that these busts, as huge as they are just a drop in the ocean. It's like trying to empty a swimming pool with a teaspoon while a fire hose is filling it up.
Now, let's be really clear here. France is nowhere near the level of violence you see in Mexico, where narco homicides are in the tens of thousands. But the alarming part isn't the current number, it's the trend. France has entered the spiral of violence that has a terrifyingly familiar, Latin American-inspired pattern. Okay, so we've seen the symptoms, right? The scale, the money, the violence. But all of this leads to a really critical question. Is this just a case of local gangs imitating what they see in narco culture? Or is something much more direct, much more sinister going on? You know, for a long time, the easy assumption was that this was a homegrown problem. But a recent discovery just outside the port city of Toulon pretty much blew that theory wide open. Let's just walk through what happened. Police raid what they think is just another local drug lab. Inside, they find this massive stash of meth, worth millions. But the smoking gun wasn't the drugs. It was the intelligence that revealed that the chemists, the highly skilled cocineros, they weren't locals. They were specialists, sent directly from Mexico on the orders of the Sinaloa cartel, one of the most powerful and ruthless criminal organizations on the planet. I mean, you have to understand, this was the turning point. This wasn't some affiliate or a copycat. This was a direct, physical, operational presence. That scary term people were using, Mexicanization, suddenly it wasn't a metaphor anymore. It was a documented reality. So to really get how serious this is, we need to ask, who are the Sinaloa cartel and their rivals? Because these aren't just gangs, they're global narco empires.
You know, the word cartel gets thrown around a lot, but it's not just a scary name for a gang. It's an economic term. Think of OPEC, right? The group of oil-producing countries that work together to control the market. Drug cartels operate on that exact same principle. They are sophisticated business consortiums built for one thing, market domination.
And their rise to power, wow, it was incredibly methodical. It starts with local poppy farmers way back in the late 1800s. By the 60s, they're supplying the U.S. market. In the 70s, they become the go-to transporters for the big Colombian cartels. And then, by the 90s, when the Colombians are weakened, the Mexican organizations just swoop in, take over the whole supply chain, and become the undisputed masters of the drug trade in the Americas.
But here's the thing, drugs are just their flagship product. Today, the major cartels are basically diversified criminal conglomerates. Their business portfolio covers everything from human smuggling and extortion to oil theft, illegal mining, and even organ trafficking. These are multi-billion-dollar enterprises with a finger in just about every illicit pie you can imagine.
Okay, so if they're already kings of the Americas, why bother with Europe? Well, the answer comes down to a business strategy that is, frankly, brilliant and absolutely terrifying.
And this is where their strategy gets really interesting. In the Americas, their model is all about brute force, territorial warfare. But in Europe, they're playing a completely different game. They're not sending armies, they're sending consultants, chemists, and logistics managers. It's a conquest through corporate-style partnerships.
And from their point of view, Europe is the perfect new market. I mean, think about it. It has actually surpassed the US as the world's #1 market for cocaine. The law enforcement pressure is, believe it or not, lower than in the States. The criminal world there is fragmented, which makes it perfect for them to come in and make deals. Plus, you've got vulnerable ports providing easy entry, and from Europe they can distribute to really lucrative markets in Asia and Oceania. It's a no-brainer.
So you see, their model in Europe isn't about planting a flag and taking over neighborhoods. It's about becoming the indispensable back-end provider. They handle the two hardest parts of the business, making the product and shipping it across an ocean, and then they let their European partners handle the risky, lower-margin job of selling it on the street. They basically become the Amazon of the underworld.
But the arrival of their logistics guys and their chemists, that's just phase 1. The real fear is what's coming next, because they are absolutely looking to introduce their most devastating products to this brand new market.
And this is where the story takes a really dark turn. In the US, the cartels flooded the market with fentanyl, a synthetic opioid 50 times stronger than heroin that now kills over 100,000 Americans every single year. The chemicals to make it are already being found in Europe, and on the horizon, something called nitazines, a whole new class of opioids that can be up to 500 times stronger than morphine. These are the products they're planning to push next.
And get this for a moment of just unbelievable, stark irony. On the exact same day that a prison van was brutally attacked in France to free a narco leader, a delegation of Mexican magistrates happened to be visiting Paris. And their message to their French colleagues was basically one chilling question. Are you going to learn from our mistakes before it's too late?
An author, Matthias Kupping, just sums this all up perfectly. He writes that Europe is just now starting to taste the real Mexican cuisine, not the kind you find at a resort, but the kind defined by terror turned into a permanent spectacle. And the question this leaves us with is, now that the cartels are serving this dish on European soil, is there any way to send it back to the kitchen?